I never thought I'd be telling this story, not because I'm ashamed, but because, deep down, I still can't believe it actually happened. I'm 78 years old. I've lived through the loss of my parents, the death of my husband, and raising 2 children mostly on my own. Life has taught me to be strong, to endure, and to forgive. But nothing in my nearly 8 decades on this earth could have prepared me for the betrayal I felt from my own daughter. If you're watching this, maybe you're curious, maybe you've gone through something similar, or maybe you're just trying to understand how a mother and daughter, who once shared everything, could end up here. Strangers divided by money, power, and lies. I wish I were making this up. I wish it were just a bad dream. But I remember every word, every tear, every night I cried myself to sleep wondering where I went wrong. My daughter and I used to be so close. When she was little, she would sneak into my bed after having a nightmare. We'd bake cookies together, laugh until we cried, and share stories under the covers like best friends. I was her world, and she was mine. I gave up so much to give her a good life, worked 2 jobs, skipped vacations, wore the same winter coat for years, just so she could have ballet lessons and birthday parties. That's what mothers do, right? We give, we protect, we love, unconditionally, but something changed. Slowly, subtly, like a crack forming in a porcelain teacup. You don't notice it at first, not until it shatters completely. After her divorce, I noticed a shift in her. She seemed more distracted, always on her phone. She started asking strange questions about my house, my savings, even my will. At first, I thought she was just worried about me. I mean, I live alone now. Maybe she was just being protective. Or so I told myself. Because the truth was too painful to even consider, that my own daughter could see me not as a mother, but as an obstacle to a payday. I want you to hear this story, not just because it's mine, but because there are so many others like me, people who've trusted too much, loved too deeply, and paid the price. Elder abuse doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes with a familiar voice, a warm smile, and the face of someone you helped bring into this world. So, sit with me for a little while. Let me tell you what happened. How I almost lost everything, my home, my freedom, and the last bit of peace I had to the one person I thought would protect me when the world no longer could. This is my story. She was my best friend once. I don't say that lightly. I've had friends, neighbors, church ladies, co-workers, but no one ever filled my heart the way she did. From the moment they put her in my arms, I knew I'd give everything I had for her. She was a quiet baby, big eyes, always watching me, like she understood the world better than the rest of us. I used to whisper to her while I rocked her to sleep, telling her all my dreams for her future, how she'd grow up smart, kind, strong, maybe a teacher, maybe a doctor. I didn't care, as long as she was happy. When she was little, she never left my side. People joked she was my shadow. If I was folding laundry, she was right there handing me socks. If I was baking cookies, she stood on a stool beside me, her tiny fingers covered in flour, giggling as she taste-tested the dough. We had our own little world. Saturday mornings meant pancakes in bed. Wednesday nights were kitchen karaoke. We'd sing into wooden spoons and dance barefoot on the linoleum. And every night before bed, she'd whisper, "Love you more, Mommy." Like it was a secret only we shared. She told me everything, her fears, her crushes, her dreams. When she was 13, she came to me crying because a friend at school betrayed her, and I held her for hours, brushing her hair back and telling her everything would be okay, that she'd always have me, and I meant that. God knows I meant it. I worked hard. Sometimes I didn't have much, but she never felt it. I made sure she had birthday parties, new school shoes, Christmas gifts under the tree. I went without so she could have, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Even into her 20s, we were close. She'd call me after job interviews, during breakups, before big decisions. She'd say, "I just need to hear your voice, Mom." And I'd drop everything, even if it was just to listen. I was there when she got married. I zipped up her dress with shaking hands, tears in my eyes, thinking, this is what all the sacrifices were for. I thought I was handing her off to a better life, that I'd done my job as a mother. But then came the divorce. And little by little, she stopped calling. She started talking more about money, about her bills, her mortgage. She was distant, distracted. I didn't know it then, but the daughter I loved, the little girl with flour on her nose and stars in her eyes, had begun to slip away, and in her place came someone else, someone I barely recognized. It was after her divorce when things started to shift. Not all at once, no big fight, no screaming, no slamming doors, just small things, quiet things, things you wouldn't notice unless you were paying close attention. She was colder, not angry, not cruel, just distant. Like she was half listening when we talked. The warmth in her voice, the sparkle in her eyes when she looked at me. It started to fade. I blamed the divorce, of course. It was a hard one, ugly. Her ex-husband had cheated, left her with debts, and she had to fight for custody. I told myself she was just tired, worn down. I told myself she'd bounce back, but she didn't. She started talking about money, constantly. Bills, legal fees, credit cards, refinancing the house. She'd say things like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this month, or if I don't figure something out, I could lose the house. I felt terrible for her. Of course I did. She's my daughter. How could I not worry? At first, I offered to help where I could. A little money here, a few groceries there. But then she started asking questions, strange questions. She'd casually mention my will. Mom, do you have everything in writing? Or, if something ever happened to you, I'd want to make sure everything is taken care of the way you want. It felt innocent at first, responsible, even, but it didn't stop. She'd ask again and again how much was in my retirement account, whether I still had that life insurance policy, if I'd thought about selling the house. One day, she even said, and I remember this word for word, if you ever start slipping, mentally, I mean, just promise you'll let me handle things. Okay, that stuck with me. I remember sitting on the couch, holding my tea, and feeling like something had shifted in the air between us. I wanted to believe she was just worried, that she was just being a good daughter. But my gut, that deep, quiet voice inside every mother, whispered something different. She was looking at me differently, not like her mom, not like the woman who raised her, protected her, sacrificed for her. She was looking at me like I was a bank account, like I was a way out. And once I realized that, I couldn't unsee it. I started noticing more. She'd come around less often, but when she did, she'd scan the room like she was taking inventory. She'd say things like, do you really need all this space? Or wouldn't a nice senior apartment be easier for you? That's when the fear started to creep in. Not fear of aging, fear of my own child. I'll never forget the day Mrs. Langston from across the street stopped me by the mailbox. It was a sunny morning, birds chirping, the kind of day that makes you feel grateful just to be alive. I smiled at her, waved like always, and then she said it. Hey, is everything all right? Your daughter mentioned you've been confused lately. Said you forget where you are sometimes. I just stood there, frozen, the mail still in my hand. I blinked, thinking I must have misheard. What? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked a little uncomfortable, lowered her tone. She just seemed worried, that's all. Said she's been keeping an eye on things. My heart dropped. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me, because I knew right then, something wasn't just wrong. It was dangerous. I had just passed my last checkup 2 months earlier. My doctor told me my memory was sharp, my blood pressure was steady, and his words, you've got the health of a woman 10 years younger. And now, my daughter was out there planting ideas in people's heads, that I was mentally slipping, that I was forgetful, confused, that I had dementia. I rushed back into the house, my hands trembling. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at nothing. My head was spinning. Why would she say that? Why would she lie? And to the neighbors. That's when I remembered something she'd said the week before. How she thought it was time to have a conversation about power of attorney. I thought she meant it as a precaution. But now, it all clicked. She wasn't protecting me. She was building a case against me. A story, a narrative, where I was the confused old lady who needed to be taken care of by her, so she could access my bank accounts, so she could move me out of my home, so she could sell the house I'd lived in for 41 years. She didn't think I'd find out. She didn't think the neighbors would repeat what she said. But that's the thing about small towns. People talk, and thank God they do. I started keeping notes after that. Dates, conversations, who said what. I made copies of my medical reports. I locked up my documents. Because if my own daughter was willing to lie about something as serious as dementia, what else was she capable of? It was like living in a nightmare, where the villain has your child's face. I wasn't just hurt, I was scared. It was a Thursday, I remember, because it was laundry day. I was folding towels in the living room when I heard her car pull up. She came in like she always did, a bit too quickly. All smiles, her purse clutched tight under her arm, but there was something in her eyes that day. Not warmth, not worry. It was calculation. She didn't sit down right away. Instead, she said, I brought some papers for you, Mom. Just a few things to sign. Nothing serious, just in case something ever happens to you. Her voice was sweet, casual, but too casual. Forced. She pulled the papers out of her bag and laid them on the table. I noticed right away that some of them had already been filled in. My name, her name, spaces for signatures, sticky notes marking the lines. I wasn't born yesterday. I picked up the first page and scanned it. Financial terms, account access, durable power of attorney. I looked up at her and said, why didn't you talk to me about this first? She smiled again, that same practiced smile. It's just a precaution, Mom. You're still fine now, but what if something happens suddenly? A stroke, a fall. You wouldn't want things to be messy. I sat there quietly for a moment. Then, I said, I want to read them carefully. She hesitated just for a second and then nodded. Of course, take your time. But I could feel the tension under her skin. Like she wasn't expecting that. Like I was supposed to just sign. After she left, I spent the whole evening reading every single page, line by line, and what I found. It wasn't just a precaution, it was control. The documents would have given her full access to my accounts, authority over my property, legal rights to make decisions for me, even if I wasn't incapacitated. And there it was, in writing, the proof that she wasn't just thinking about my safety. She was preparing to take everything, without my consent. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing her voice in my head, just in case something happens. And I realized, she wasn't waiting for something to happen. She was planning it. That's when the fear turned into resolve. I wasn't going to let her do this to me, not without a fight. I've lived too long, worked too hard, and survived too much to be tricked by my own child with a smile and a pen. I never thought I'd say this, but my own daughter tried to have me declared legally incompetent. I'm not talking about some misunderstanding or a concern out of love. I mean legal papers, lawyers, a formal petition to the court stating that I was no longer capable of managing my own life. I found out from a letter, a thick envelope with the county court seal. When I opened it and read the words petition for guardianship due to diminished mental capacity, I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I read it over and over, not believing it. There was her name, listed as the petitioner. My name, under alleged incapacitated adult, alleged like I was a criminal. She had actually hired a lawyer, paid someone to build a case that I was no longer fit to make my own decisions, that I needed her to protect me. And the worst part, she brought evidence, notes from neighbors she'd spoken to, likely the same ones she'd told I was getting forgetful. She even listed 2 incidents where I forgot to pay a bill on time and got turned around in the grocery store. Turned around, I'd walked into the wrong aisle. That's not dementia, that's life. But there it was, written cold and clinical, like I was already gone. I called her immediately. I asked her straight out, why would you do this? She paused, then she said, Mom, I'm trying to help you. You're just too proud to admit you need support. Support, is that what she called stealing someone's independence? I told her I wasn't signing anything, that I was getting my own lawyer. She didn't like that. Her voice changed, sharper, colder. She said something I'll never forget. If you won't cooperate, the court will decide for you. That's when I knew. This wasn't about love. This was about control. She wanted my house, my savings, my pension, and she was willing to go to court and call me mentally unfit to get them. But I wasn't about to let that happen. I may be old, I may be slower than I used to be, but I am not incompetent. I gathered my medical records, letters from my real friends, statements from my doctor, everything I needed to defend myself. Because this wasn't just about me, it was about every older person out there who's been treated like they're disposable once they're no longer useful. I wasn't going to be another victim, not today, not ever. I never thought I'd be the one to file papers. Me, an old woman with arthritis and a garden full of tomatoes, going to court to defend herself against her own flesh and blood. But after what she did, I realized something. If I didn't fight back, I'd lose everything. Not just my house, my dignity. I found the lawyer. His name was David. He came recommended by a friend from church. kindeyes.com voice, and thank the Lord he listened. He didn't treat me like I was fragile. He treated me like a person who had something worth fighting for. I brought every document I had, my clean bill of health, my bills paid on time, notes I'd taken of every strange thing she'd said to me in the last 6 months. And then I told him the truth. My daughter is trying to steal my life while I'm still living it. He didn't blink. He just said, then let's make sure she doesn't succeed. We filed a formal objection to her guardianship petition. But more than that, we filed a claim of undue influence. David explained that what she was doing wasn't just immoral. It was a legal tactic used all too often to manipulate the elderly into giving up control. The court date came faster than I expected. I wore my Sunday best. Not to impress anyone, but because I wanted them to see me, really see me. Not some frail old lady, but a woman who raised a daughter on her own, who worked 40 years in a school cafeteria, who still did crossword puzzles every morning and baked from scratch. She walked into that courtroom looking confident, cold, like this was going to be easy. But then I took the stand, and I told my story about the surprise paperwork, the lies to the neighbors, the attempt to isolate me, the court petition behind my back. I showed my medical records, my letters of support. I spoke clearly, firmly, and with every ounce of pride I had left. And when it was her turn to speak, she faltered. She tried to fake concern, but the judge saw through it. Maybe it was the way she couldn't answer simple questions about my health. Maybe it was the fact that she couldn't name my doctor. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because justice has a way of finding its way through. The judge ruled in my favor. Her petition was denied. I kept my independence, my home, and my rights. I didn't walk away happy. I walked away heartbroken. Because while I won in court, I lost something far more painful. The little girl who used to dance with me in the kitchen. After the court ruling, I thought things would settle down. I thought maybe, just maybe, people would see the truth. But instead, the silence started. People didn't know what to say to me. Some didn't say anything at all. Others, they looked at me differently, like they were confused or uncomfortable. And then came the whispers. She must be exaggerating. I've seen her daughter at the grocery store. She's always helping her mom. There's no way she'd do something like that. I remember one woman from church, someone I've known for over 20 years, pulled me aside and said, "Are you sure you're remembering things correctly? Stress can play tricks on our minds at your age." At my age, that one stung. I had just defended myself in court, stood up to my own daughter, and proven my mental clarity with medical reports. But to the outside world, I was still just an old lady. A lot of people didn't believe me because what happened didn't fit into the story they had in their heads. They saw a daughter who smiled in public, brought me flowers on holidays, and posed for family photos at Thanksgiving. They didn't see the manipulation behind closed doors, the fake concern, the twisted smile. And when I told them, it made them uncomfortable, because if my daughter could do something like this, what did that mean about their kids? It was easier for them to think I was mistaken, that I was bitter, that I was losing it. So I stopped telling the full story. I smiled politely when people said, "I'm so glad everything worked out." I nodded when someone said, "I bet she meant well, even if it got messy." But inside, I felt more alone than ever. Because being betrayed by your child is one kind of pain, but being disbelieved by everyone else, that's another. It makes you question everything. Did I imagine it? Was I too harsh? But no, I kept a journal. I had the records. I lived through every moment. I know what happened. And eventually, I found one or two people who believed me. Other women, older, like me, who had gone through something similar. Some had lost everything. Others had stories too painful to tell in public. And slowly, I realized I wasn't alone. This wasn't just about me. It was about us. Older people pushed aside, questioned, dismissed. So now, I talk. I share my story not to shame my daughter, but to protect the next mother, the next grandmother. Because silence is what lets this happen. And I won't be silent anymore. People ask me all the time, "Do you hate her now?" And the truth is, I don't. I still love her. I don't think a mother ever stops loving her child. I remember the first time I held her. She was so small, so warm, with tiny fingers that wrapped around mine like I was her whole world. And in that moment, I promised her everything, that I would protect her, that I would never let her feel alone, that I would be her soft place to fall, no matter what. I kept that promise. Through fevers and heartbreaks, through broken curfews and teenage tears, I was there. I helped her pay for college. I gave her the down payment for her first house. When her husband left, I held her as she cried and told her, "You'll rise from this, sweetheart, you always do." So no, I don't hate her, but I don't trust her. And that's a kind of heartbreak I wasn't prepared for. Because love and trust, they're supposed to go hand in hand, especially between a mother and daughter. But now, every time the phone rings, and it's her name on the screen, my heart skips. Not with excitement, but with caution. I ask myself, what does she want? Is this a real visit, or is there a motive again? That voice inside me, the one that used to glow with motherly pride, now whispers warnings. She says the right things now. She sends birthday cards again. Sometimes she even brings flowers and sits on the porch like we used to. But I watch her more closely than I ever did before. I see the way her eyes scan the room, like she's still assessing, calculating. Trust is like fine china. Once it's cracked, you can glue it back together, but it's never quite the same. You see the lines, even when it's whole. I miss the girl who used to sing off-key in my kitchen, the one who made me macaroni art and called it a masterpiece. I still love that girl. I just don't know where she went. And maybe she's still in there somewhere, behind all the bitterness, behind the desperation. But I've learned now, love doesn't mean letting your guard down. Not anymore. You can love someone and still say no. You can love someone and still protect yourself. And that's what I do now. I keep my heart soft, but my eyes open. When all this began, I thought I was the only one, the only mother whose child turned cold, the only grandmother, being told she was confused when she knew exactly what was going on, the only person who sat awake at night, heart racing, asking herself, how did this happen? How did my baby girl become someone I have to protect myself from? But after the court case, after the silence from the community, after the whispers faded, something else happened. Letters started arriving, not from lawyers, from people like me, women I hadn't seen in years, a man from my old neighborhood, even a nurse who cared for my sister back when she was in hospice. They wrote things like, "I thought I was the only one. My son did the same. I never told anyone until now. Thank you for speaking out. You gave me the courage to say no." And suddenly, I didn't feel so alone anymore. This wasn't just my story. This is happening everywhere, behind front doors and drawn curtains, in quiet neighborhoods, in well-decorated homes with smiling Christmas cards on the fridge. Good people, older people are being pushed aside, manipulated, gaslit, all while being told, it's for your own good. We're told we're forgetful when we question something. We're told we're difficult when we set boundaries. We're told we should be grateful for the help, even when that help means signing away our lives. But here's what I've learned. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to question motives. Even when they come from your own family, you are allowed to protect what you've built, your home, your savings, your mind, your peace. And if someone calls you paranoid, or dramatic, or confused, that doesn't make it true. That just means they're scared you're paying attention. I tell my story not because I want pity. I don't have to tell it because someone out there needs to hear it right now. Someone is being pressured into signing papers they don't understand. Someone is being told they're too old to make choices. Someone is wondering if they're imagining the manipulation, the change in tone, the strange questions about money. You're not imagining it, and you're not alone. I'm still standing, and so will you. If my story gives just one person the courage to speak up, then it was worth it, because silence is how this happens. And telling the truth, no matter how painful, is how it ends. They say family is everything, but I've learned something deeper. Family isn't just blood. It's who shows up, who respects you, who tells the truth even when it's uncomfortable and listens, even when it hurts. I didn't want to end up in court. I didn't want to become a cautionary tale. I wanted peace. I wanted quiet. I wanted Sunday afternoons with coffee, a crossword, and a phone call from my daughter that didn't make my stomach twist. But life doesn't always give us what we want. Sometimes, it gives us the truth whether we're ready or not. I lost something when all this happened. I lost the version of motherhood I held on to, the warm memories, the automatic trust. But I gained something too. I gained a voice. I stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. I stopped letting guilt write my story. And instead of just being grandma or mom, I became me again. Strong, clear, unafraid. I may be older, but I'm not invisible. I may be retired, but I'm not disposable. I chose to speak. I chose to fight. I chose myself. And if you're watching this, and something in your heart is stirring, like maybe you're living a story like mine, I hope you know something simple and true. You still matter. You still have time. And you have every right to protect the life you built. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living on my own terms. And I'm not afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of staying silent.